There's no doubt that Steam Deck has made a massive impact on the handheld gaming market. It seems to have become the new benchmark. Every time we look at a new device, everyone has the same comments. It's either, is this thing more powerful than the Steam Deck? Or, at this cost, you might as well just buy a Steam Deck. Even over a year later, with handheld PCs that are in fact more powerful than the Steam Deck, it still remains the golden standard. While I've seen merits of the Steam Deck, I do own one after all. I actually don't think I've spent more than 20 hours gaming on it. I love the idea of Steam Deck. I'll even recommend Steam Deck to friends, depending on what they're looking for. But I've always kind of felt that Steam Deck was a nerfed experience in a lot of ways. It's just that handheld gaming PCs are a more flexible gaming option, with kind of insane specs. The shiny and new always had me hooked. There's a new one of these handheld gaming PCs on nearly a monthly schedule, and I can barely keep up. The Asus ROG Ally had the 120Hz 1080p screen and it was super light. The Legion Go had a 1600p screen, 144Hz refresh rate, and that unique mouse mode for first-person shooters. Aya Neo has a new device with like a crazy spin on it every few months. Why would I give this seemingly outdated competitor my time? It only has an 800p 60Hz screen and it runs Linux. Yuck, right? The Windows handheld market has an edge up on Steam Deck. It runs any application, any launcher, you can access Xbox Game Pass, and it still does run Steam. Steam Deck has, well, it has Steam, and workarounds for other launchers, but it also has limitations when it comes to game compatibility. At least, that was my opinion until Valve announced the OLED Steam Deck as a variation of the current Steam Deck, not a generational leap, and that's when I had a moment of realization. The Steam Deck is a console, not a handheld gaming PC. Windows has such a painful setup process. I mean, we're running an OS meant for like word processing. It just happens to be able to game. And that gap in Windows is painfully obvious. As much as I love the benefits of Windows like Game Pass and the insane specs on some of these designs, they usually come with a hefty price tag and a whole lot of setup headache. Valve has taken a route more similar to the Nintendo Switch. Keep the hardware the same and give it a bit of a refresh to make it the definitive version of that device. Maybe Valve's Steam Deck is the perfect balance of the right specs, solid hardware, and excellent value. Since the initial launch of Steam Deck and the introduction of so many handheld gaming PCs into the market, I've pretty much shifted how I game dramatically. I used to be a purely console gamer, but now I've amassed a decently sized Steam library and I find myself opting to buy PC games instead of console games. As for my go-to handheld, well, it certainly wasn't the Steam Deck. But now I've had some time with the OLED limited edition Steam Deck, and I may have just changed how I game yet again. The new Steam Deck OLED has a pretty long list of upgrades. Of course, the star of the refresh is the slightly larger 7.4-inch OLED screen with HDR support. The screen spec bump doesn't end there though. It's also got a 90Hz refresh rate and a peak brightness of 1000 nits. It's a truly excellent looking screen. This has been a surprisingly controversial thing online, but I think the anti-glare screen looks great. I want to play a game, not look into a mirror. So yes, the star of the show is without a doubt the screen, but the updates on this refresh go even deeper. We've now got support for faster Wi-Fi 6E. This makes a massive difference in download speeds as long as your router supports it. Some other updates to the Steam Deck hardware include Bluetooth 5.3, a smaller 6nm APU, and a battery increase from 40 Wh to 50 Wh. At the surface, it might seem like a minor spec bump for the battery, but Valve says that it will actually result in a 50% battery life increase. I played through several hours of Stray on the OLED, and I found myself lost in the game, not worried about battery percentage, and I was able to play for about 3.5 hours straight through. My original Steam Deck was always hindered by battery paranoia. I just spent so much time toggling the quick settings to check the battery percentage or changing the screen refresh rate. Design-wise, the OLED model isn't all that different, but I've got the limited edition model here which looks awesome. It comes in a very cool carrying case too. At the surface, it seems like the same Steam Deck case from the LCD model, but it's actually detachable for a slimmer profile case. The regular OLED model has the orange Steam Deck icon on the outside, while the limited edition one is just black. I kind of wish that this one had the orange accent too, but it's made up for it by the awesome interior pattern. As for the actual Steam Deck device, the translucent shell is really well made. It's high quality, and the slight transparency is really great looking. Sometimes, transparent shells can cause tons of light bleed, but the power indicator is well diffused in this shell and there's no light bleed from the screen at all. The orange accents all around the device are a great touch for the design. The regular OLED model will still have the orange accented power button, which is still a fun differentiator. The only real difference for the controller-wise of the Steam Deck is the analog stick thumb caps on the OLED. They're a bit more concave and help the analog sticks feel a lot grippier. Something that I haven't seen anyone talk about but has been a massive improvement for me is the touchscreen responsiveness. I had a really hard time doing things like typing on the Steam Deck, but the OLED Steam Deck screen is way better. Typing is actually possible for me this time. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I'm really glad to see that this is dramatically improved. My time with the OLED Steam Deck started with the first time setup, which again, compared to a Windows gaming handheld, well, there is no comparison, but we'll do it anyway. To set up the Steam Deck, you just connect to Wi-Fi, scan the QR code to log into Steam, and wait a few minutes for some system updates. On the other hand, Windows takes you through with just a really poor setup. Between the constant reboots as it updates, to trying to sell you Office 365 and OneDrive subscriptions, and it's probably going to make your device rotate between portrait and landscape for absolutely no reason, by the time you finally get to a Windows desktop, you probably could have had a game completely already installed on the Steam Deck. One of the best things about Steam Deck is that behind the easy-to-use familiar interface of SteamOS is just Linux. It's just a plain old PC. So with a few taps, you can get into desktop mode and you've got a ton more that you can do with your Steam Deck. Now, what kind of video would this be without some emulation? Since I last set up EmuDeck on my LCD Steam Deck, it's evolved so much to now that it's like a brand new experience. EmuDeck is great because it gets all of the setup of the emulators out of the way. It even applies settings specific to the Steam Deck. Installation is insanely easy, and you can even add ROMs and emulators straight to your Steam library. When it comes to Steam Deck and emulation performance, it's actually pretty great. Not only do we have basically the entirety of the GameCube library that will play really well, even upscaled, but we can play tons of PS2 and Wii games. Wii U is probably the standout emulator for me here. With some tweaks and setting modifications, you can actually get games to run at Steam Deck's native 16:10 resolution, which looks amazing. The Steam Deck also handles Switch emulation pretty well too. While I did say before that Steam Deck is pretty much locked down to Steam, that isn't necessarily true. Through desktop mode, we have access to the Discover Software Center where we can install an app called Heroic Launcher. This app lets you log into your GOG and Epic accounts to install games you own from there. After the game installs, you can even add it directly to your Steam library. All of this is to say the experience on Steam Deck is second to none because of how streamlined it is. Steam Deck's software is the perfect balance of gaming first, desktop experience second, and neither feel compromised, the opposite of Windows. If you want a somewhat similar experience on Windows, you can get the same feel by enabling Big Picture mode and setting it to auto launch on startup. You'll eventually get to something looking more similarly to Steam Deck, but only after you first stare at a Windows desktop for several minutes while Windows does whatever it needs to do in the background. When it comes to gaming on Steam Deck, Valve makes it insanely easy to choose what games you want to experience on Steam Deck. Not every game is going to run on the device, but there's over 12,000 Steam Deck verified games to choose from. If there is one game that isn't compatible that you really want to play, you can always check out ProtonDB. It's a community-driven website that helps identify tweaks, settings, or different versions of Proton that you can run to get the game up and running, even though it's listed as incompatible. The verified program that Valve runs is a great incentive for developers to focus on providing enhancements or specific Steam Deck-friendly settings to make the game verified. You may be surprised to find what games are in fact Deck verified. I was personally really impressed that The Last of Us is verified. It's fairly graphically intensive, had a pretty rough launch, but it seems to have had enough updates and optimization so even the Steam Deck can handle it. Windows handhelds don't exactly have the same system to help identify what will run. Every game will install, but will the game actually be playable is another question altogether. So while I think the Steam Deck experience is second to none, there are some nitpicks I do have with Steam Deck. I still think the trackpads are just about useless, but at least they don't get in the way. I've come to just accept the top USB-C port, but I wish there was a second one. The 50% battery life increase will always be welcome, but you're not going to get an all-day battery life from this guy. So don't expect to fly from New York to LA on a single charge playing AAA games the whole way. I wish that some games that have an anti-cheat would work natively, like Call of Duty, but I know that's a game developer thing, not a Valve thing. I don't love that I'm giving up local Game Pass, but at least I can do Game Pass in the cloud if I absolutely need to. Steam Deck isn't perfect, but this refresh is just about as close as you can get. The attention to detail, from the build of the hardware, to the integration of the software, to the nice touches like the accent orange on the shell carrying over to the orange accent on the Steam boot logo. It shows that Valve has poured their heart and soul into a product they care so deeply about and are actually proud of. The specific enhancements in this refresh were an eye-opening experience for me. Valve is clearly focused on upgrading things that will make a meaningful difference to handheld gamers without dramatic price hikes. In fact, they've potentially given us more value. The 256GB LCD model is now the price of what was previously the 64GB model, and that goes for $399. There's a price jump to get to OLED, but you get a 512 OLED for $550, and if you want the 1TB, you can add another $100. The $550 starter price for the OLED Steam Deck is still less expensive than the Legion Go or the Asus ROG Ally. So this is all to say that I've gone from a Steam Deck doubter to a Steam Deck believer. It's an easy recommendation for somebody who wants to get into PC gaming with an awesome introductory price. Does this mean I'll leave handheld Windows gaming devices behind? Well, no. I love to tinker with those and I love to see how they're evolving. And there will certainly be more to look at that will continue to give Steam Deck a run for its money. Before the Steam Deck OLED, when I'm gaming on the go, I wouldn't even consider bringing my Steam Deck around. Well, that has changed. Steam Deck is coming along for my road trips. But that's just my opinion. What do you think of the Steam Deck OLED? Do you think the price is worth it? Are you potentially upgrading from the original Steam Deck? Are you a Windows handheld fan? What kind of device are you waiting for? Let me know down in the comments. Get subscribed so you don't miss future videos, and thanks for watching.